Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be recreating this puzzle from Resident Evil 2 Remake. This is just kind of a simple puzzle where you have a switch box that you have to switch different switches into the correct position to turn on the light or solve a puzzle or something like that. Now, if you find this useful, please be sure to leave me a like and subscribe. Check out the links below if you want to support me further. I did spend a lot of time and I put a lot of effort into actually 3D modeling kind of a replica of this. And so if you want to get access to that, check out the Patreon link below to see how you can get that. But if you don't want to, I totally understand. There are some free models out there that you can use to do that. All right, let's get started. All right, here we are back in our project. The first thing that we're going to do is open up our content drawer, go into blueprints, and we are going to create a child blueprint of our puzzle master. But one thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a player reference in our puzzle master here, because we often need to access our player from these blueprints. So I think it'll be a good idea just to go ahead and add this in the base, and then we'll just have a variable for that. So let's get events begin play, and we just want to cast to first person character or whatever you called your character. Out of object is going to be get player character. And then we're just going to drag out and promote that to a variable. And I'm going to call this player ref. Okay, so now we will just have access to our player ref, and that way we won't have to do this each time that we need it. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And we'll go into puzzles and we'll create a new blueprint. The type is going to be BP puzzle master. And I'm going to call this BP electric box underscore puzzle. Let's open that up. And the first thing that we want to do with this is we want to go ahead and add our meshes. So I've gone ahead and imported these. I've shown you guys how to import and apply textures and a few other ones. So I just did this just to kind of save time. But if you don't know how to do that, just be sure to go back and see the past tutorials where I show you how to do that. All right, so we've got our box in here. We've got the box, we've got a switch, and we have a needle. So we need 4 of these switches. But the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and kind of move this into position, just to get it kind of roughly where I want. Somewhere about there. And I also want to have these, by default, I want to have them in the off position. So I'm going to rotate this down, let's see, maybe about that far. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this. We'll call this electric switch 01. And now we'll just duplicate these, just Control D to duplicate. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we can just take 2 and just move that over. 3, move that over. And our 4th one, move that over. Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and compile and save. Let's do the same thing with our needle. First of all, I'm going to rename it to 01. And go ahead and drag this, put it over here. And I just want to line it up right in the center there. And then I'm going to just push it in until it just barely shows. The end just barely shows there. That's too much. These are very tiny, so it can be a little finicky. All right, that looks good. And then we just want to duplicate that so that we have the second one. And we will just drag that one over. Okay. Now, the way that I want to do it is I want to have them set on 0 by default. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this. I think 40 degrees looks good as well on that. Okay. Let's go ahead and compile and save. And we can go ahead and drag this out into our scene. Let's find the blueprint and puzzle. And what we want to do is we want to be able to walk up to this, interact with it, and then we want to actually transition to another camera that is going to be locked right in front of it. So there is a pretty easy way to do that, but we need a camera. So we're going to also add a camera, just a regular camera. And let's go ahead and move this to where it is kind of facing this. Now, we can't really see what the view of this camera looks like, at least in this view, but there is a way that we can do this. So if I just drag this out so I can kind of see both of these at the same time, you'll see that down here we can actually see our view, but it's way too dark. So let's just add a kind of construction light in here, just so that we have a little bit of light. And now if I click back on this, now you can see what the actual view of this camera is going to be. So I want to just position it to, roughly where I want the view of that to be. So I think that looks pretty good. Go ahead and compile, and then I'm just going to dock this back up here. And that is pretty much all we need to do in the viewport right now. So we'll delete those two things. Don't need those for right now. And let's get started. So since we're using our BP Puzzle Master as our base, we have our interaction already. So let's get that. And remember I said I want to, when I interact with that, I want to switch to this camera. Now there's a pretty easy way to do that, fortunately. What we can do is, let me just check my notes, make sure I'm getting the right one. Okay, so if we get our player controller, we can drag out of that, and we can type set view target with blends. And the target, this is a little confusing. You might think it would be the camera, but it's actually just going to be the self or self. So we'll drag out of new view target, and we'll just type self, get a reference to self. And we'll go ahead and hook this up. Now there's a blend time here that I want to change. And what this will do is it will be the time that it blends from our camera to the new camera. So I'm going to set this to something like 0.5. Okay, so if we go ahead and play, let's just check that out and see how that looks. So if I press E, there we go. So it zooms in, and there's a nice little transition. But there's obviously some problems. So first problem is I can't get out of this. The other problem, I don't know if I can really show you. I can show you like this. If I hit F8 to kind of undock us here, our character can still move around. So if I hit F8 again, and if I move the WSA and D keys, if I go back out, now you can see that I've moved over here. So we need to disable the movement for our character. And then we need a way to get out of this, and then we need to disable our HUD. And then we also need a way to click on these switches. So there's a lot to do here. All right, so to allow us to be able to actually click on these switches, we need to enable something called click events, and that is on our player controller. So we actually already have that right here. So we can drag out, and if I type set click events, set enable click events, we want that. And we want to set that to be true. Okay. And I'm just going to add a reroute node in here just to try and keep this clean because it's going to get a little messy if we don't. And then we also want to show our mouse cursor. So that, again, will come from the player controller. So I'm going to drag out from here and show mouse cursor. Set show mouse cursor is what we want. We want to set that to be true. Look that up next. Add another reroute node. All right. And then we also want to disable our movements. So we can just get our player ref here, grab that, and disable movements from our character movements there. Okay. And that should be everything that we need, I believe, for this part anyway. All right, so let's just straighten all this up. And let's go ahead and test this out. Oh, there is one more thing that we want to do. We want to hide our HUD. And we created a function in our player to do that. So we've got our player ref already. So I can type hide HUD. And we will hide that like so. Okay, compile and save. And let's check that out. All right, so we zoom in, our cursor is visible, and now we will be able to actually click on these when we set up the click events. All right, so I think that looks good. We still don't have a way to exit that. Let's go ahead and do that right now. The way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to actually create another input action for basically like a back input. So I'm just going to duplicate the run, call this IA back. Go ahead and save everything. Then we go to our inputs and let's add a mapping that is going to be back. And I'm going to make this Q. Of course, you can make it whatever you want. All right. And now, in order for us to be able to access that input within this blueprint, we need to enable input. So we can do that on begin play here. Let's see. I believe we need to do that from our player controller. Or can I just type enable inputs? Yeah, we need our player controller. So let's just duplicate our player controller here. Okay. So now we can actually call IA back. And let's just test this out first. Just do a print string. And just make sure that that is working. Okay, so I'm pressing Q and that is registering. That's good. So what we want to do here is we want to essentially do all of this, but kind of the opposite. So I'll go ahead and delete that. We want to do this as well, or do this set view target with blends on started. And our target will be the player controller. This time, though, the new target will not be self. It will be the player ref because we're going back to the camera that we have on our player. Okay, and then we are going to want to basically do these. So I'm just going to Control D to duplicate those. But we just want to uncheck those and need to plug that up to our player controller. Let me just move this up a little bit. And then for our player ref, I'll just duplicate that. And I can't type enable movements This always confuses me. I don't know why they don't just call it enable movement, but you have to type set movement mode. And then we need to choose what mode we want to go into. So we can just choose walking there. Let's hook that up. And then we also want to show our HUD. So I have a function to show the HUD. And we will turn that back on. Oops. All right, and that should be good. Compile and save, and let's test that out. All right, so we zoom in, and we are able to click on things, which again, we don't have the click events set up yet. But then if I press B, we will move back out. Now, there is a bug that I have noticed, or I don't know if it's a bug or if it's just I don't know how to fix it. And if anyone does know how to fix this, please let us know. But I've noticed you can even see when we move in, it's kind of hard to see here, but if I move my mouse around, I can see there, and like when I actually click on something, our character is rotating, and I don't really know why, because we've disabled movement, and then you can see you'll get kind of some weird, a view sometimes will not be kind of the same view that you did when you entered this view. Now, if you just click E and go into it and then click Q, then that looks fine. But for some reason, whenever I click, it is rotating the character, and I don't know why. If anyone knows why, let us know. It'd be super helpful. It's not really a huge deal. It just can lead to kind of some weird results sometimes. Sometimes your camera might be, looking over here or looking down or something like that. But regardless, this is working pretty much as intended now. All right, so let's go back here and let's just go ahead and comment this. This is just going to be our interaction. And I'm just going to make that something like a blue. All right. Now, since we have enabled the click events, when we begin interacting with this, what we can do is actually select whatever switch that we want. And if we go over here, type click, you'll find on clicked. And we get this function here that will allow us to actually do something. So if I just put a print string on here, we can say clicked switch. And so now when we go in, and now if we click on that, we are registering, the game is registering that we are actually clicking on that. If I click off anywhere else or on any of these other ones, it's not registering that. It's only going to register when I click on that. Now, of course, you do need to make sure that your switches have correct collision. That could cause issues. Again, you can check that under show, turn on collision. You just want to make sure that your switches do have collision and that it's not being blocked by anything else. But you should be good to go on that. So let's go ahead and get the on-clicked for each one of these, 3 and 4. And essentially what we want to do for each one of these, when we click on this, we want to, if we go back to our viewport here, we want to rotate this from, we're at 40. Let's look over here. We want to rotate it up to probably 40 there. So we're at positive 40, and we want to move it to negative 40. Okay. So the way that I'm going to do that is with a timeline. So add timeline, and we'll call this rotate switch. All right, and let's go ahead and open up our timeline. All right, so we will go ahead and add a float track. And I'm going to set my time to be very short. I'm going to try 0.1. And we want to add two keys here. And my first one, let me look at this again, is going to be 40. So at time 0, we want it to be 40. And our second one will be time 0.1, and the value will be negative 40 because that's what we want to move it to. And let's go ahead and compile that. And now if we go back here, if we get our switch and we want to set relative rotation on that update, and we'll right-click on New Rotation, split the struct bin, and our new track here is going to plug into the X because that's what we're moving. And then we want to be able to do the reverse of this. So we can use the flip-flop node here. And on B, we want to do a reverse. All right, so let's just test that out here. Okay, so when I click on this, it's going to flip that up. When I click it down, or when I click it again, it's going to flip it back and forth. And that is pretty much perfect. Okay. One thing I do see is I think all of these need to be moved up just slightly. So let's go ahead and do that. Just going to control select all of our switches. And let's make sure that we are in world space. And I'm just going to move them up just a tiny bit. And I also wonder if, yeah, I think we might actually go from 50 to negative 50. So let's adjust that here. Go back into our timeline. And we just need to set this value to be 50. And our end value will be negative 50. Okay. Let's compile. Go back here, and that should be good. Let's just test that one more time. Yeah, that looks a little better. Okay. Now, of course, you can play around with the times if you want that to be a little bit faster, a little bit slower. But I think that will work pretty well. All right, so we basically just want to do this for each one. So we can copy this part here. I'm just going to duplicate that. And I'll just move this down. I don't really like the look of that. Okay. And you could go in and you could rename each one of these. Probably would be a good idea to rename each one of these to, you know, keep things organized. Maybe even change this one to like rotate switch number 1, rotate switch number 2, etc. But just to kind of save time, I'm going to leave that off right now. And we want to get, this will be for switch 2. Might not be a bad idea to actually add these for switch 01, switch 02, and then we'll do 3 and 4 as well. So again, I'm just Control D to duplicate that. And that's very annoying that that does not line up perfectly. By the way, to straighten these, I'm just highlighting things and then I'm pressing the Q key, and that will automatically straighten those for you. Oh, I just noticed I did that into Y instead of X. All right, and that's going to be switch number 3. And then again, we're going to duplicate this. And my OCD requires me to straighten all of those into X, and that will be switch 4. Okay. Okay, and let's also comment these switch 0, 4. Switch 0, 4. And then I think we can actually highlight all of these. Align, distribute vertically. That did not work. Okay. I thought maybe that would make things a little bit easier for us, but it did not. So I'm just going to do this manually. All right. It's not perfect, but it's close enough. You'll start to kind of develop your own systems for keeping all of things organized. It may seem trivial to, make sure all these things are perfect like this, but it really does help when you are looking through things. And, if things are messy and unorganized, it can be kind of hard to follow a lot of times. So it really is a good idea to try and keep your blueprints as organized as you can. All right, so let's go ahead and compile that, and let's just test that out. All right, so we should be able to click on all of these and flip them back and forth, and it looks like that is working perfectly. All right. Now, you probably want to add a sound for those. I know I would like to. So I think what I'll probably do is maybe move all this over. I really should have done this before. I really should have done this on the first one, and then we could have just copied it. But there you go. So right here, I'm just going to add a play sound 2D is fine. And we'll just add that into each area here. And I have this sound that I found on freesound.org that I'm going to import. Drag this in. And gotta change some things in OBS to make sure you can hear this. So this is just very much what it sounds like, a panel switch. So we're just going to add that for each one of these. Okay. So now each time we click on that, we get that sound, which is perfect. And then again, Q should get us out of that. Okay. All right. Now, what we need to do is we need to also move the needle for each one of these. And this really kind of comes down to however you want to do it. But essentially what we want to do is we want to design it to where when we flip this one on, we rotate this needle a certain amount, and we rotate this other needle a certain amount as well. And we want to kind of figure out, kind of what the final finished puzzle or the finished result is going to be, which ones are going to need to be on and which ones will need to be off. You could do this a few different ways, but I think the best way to do it would be to basically if you have all 4 of these turned on, they're going to all be, maxed out, whatever this number is. Let's actually look at our needles here. So they are starting at 40 on the y-axis, and it looks like the end there would be -40. So that's pretty easy to figure out there. Now it just takes a little bit of very simple math that, it looks like that needs to be at 35, we add 35 to it. So what would that be, 5? Yeah, so that will be kind of the end result that we want to get for that. And on this other needle, it looks like maybe minus 25. Yeah, I think that will be our end result there. So those are kind of the numbers that we need to remember for however we're going to set this up. All right. Okay, so the way that I'm going to do this is we need to create a couple of variables here. First of all, we need a variable for each one of the switches to know when they are on or off. So I'm going to go ahead and create one and call it switch 01 underscore on. And we want to do that for each switch. So we're going to just duplicate this, call this switch 02 on. Duplicate again, 03 on, and one more for 04 on. Okay. Now, again, I probably should have done this when we were making these, but we want to, for when we interact with our switch, we want to actually set these here. So I'm going to drag this out, hold Alt to set, and we're going to hook these up right here. And so the first time that we toggle this, so the first time we click on this, we want to set that to true. And then on B, and then that plugs into reverse, that's going to be false. Okay. So I'm just going to go through and set these for each one. Okay. So now I've got all of those being set on and off whenever we are toggling those, which is good. Now, we need to think about our needles. So we are going to want to track the positions or the rotations of these. And one thing that I want to do is I want to get the initial rotation of this, and I want to set that because I want to know what that is. So if I get my needle 01, drag this out, I can get the relative... if I can spell, relative rotation. And I'm going to drag out from there and promote that to a variable. And we're going to call that needle 01 rotation. And so we're going to set that on begin play. That way, if we change this at any point, it's just going to automatically set whatever the rotation is for us so that we don't have to worry about that. And then we're going to do the same thing for needle 02. So get the relative rotation. Whoops. Rotation and promote that to a variable. That will be called needle 02 rotation, and we'll set that there. Okay, so now we have those. Now I am going to create a custom events, and I'm going to call this switch 01, because this is what I want to have happen when we interact with switch 01, which we're technically doing right here, but we want to set this up for the needles. So when we, and actually before we forget, we want to put this event, we want to trigger this on switch 01 on the finished part right here. So let's go ahead and add that. Switch 01, it's going to go right there. Okay. Now, what we want to do is we want to run a check here. So let's get a branch. And we're going to be checking if the switch is on or not, like so. And essentially we want to move the needle. We'll start with needle 01. So I'm going to bring that out. Now, I'm going to show you guys a little different way to do this. Instead of using a timeline, you could use a timeline, but I'm just going to show you an alternate method just to show you a different way to do this. So there's another function called move component to, And this will basically allow you to manipulate the location and the rotation. Now, the only thing that we want to manipulate here or change is the rotation. So we can't leave this at just 0, 0, 0, or if we did, then it would literally just set the location of this to 0, 0, 0. So we want to set the location to whatever the current location is here. So if I just drag out and if I just type get location, then we can just get the relative location and plug that in like so. And then that will be good to go. And what we want to do is we want to get our needle 1 rotation here. So I'm going to drag that out and get that. And we're going to want to split the struct pin. We're going to do that over here as well, because the only thing that we want to change is the Y. Now, if you remember, if we go back and look at this, needle 01 is at plus 40, and we want to move it to the right, however much. This is really for you to determine. I'm going to go maybe 20 degrees, but you'll see that I actually have to subtract 20 degrees to get it there. So if we go back here, we need to subtract, and then this is going to be 20, and we're going to plug that in, and this is going to be on the true there. Okay, now the other thing that we need to do is we need to keep updating the rotation, because when we go to move, or when we click on the second switch and we want to move this, we need to know what the new rotation is going to be, and that new rotation is what we're doing right here. So we're taking the initial rotation and we're subtracting 20 from the Y. And so we need to then set, so I'm going to drag this out, hold Alt, whoops, and on completed, we're going to set that. So I'll split that, and the result is going to be the initial minus whatever you put here, and that is going to be our new rotation now, okay? So then on false, so when we click on the switch, we're turning it on, and we're setting it, setting the rotation here to whatever we set here. And on false, we want to do the opposite. We can essentially just duplicate all of this. With one exception, we just need to do the opposite right here. So you could either add 20 or you could just type in -20 here. Okay, and that's going to go on false. Now, let's go ahead and try that out, compile and save. Again, make sure that on your timeline here on finished, you are calling that event that we just created right here. So let's go ahead and check that. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and you can see that moves. That's good. And now if I click it again to turn it off, it's going to go back. And that is exactly what we want. Now, the next part of this is we want to also, or I want to move the second needle as well, okay? So again, we're going to do basically the same thing. We're going to move components to. This is going to get a little messy, but there's not really a great way to do this. And let's see, we can actually put this at the end, or on the back end of this. So we'll move it here. And we need to get the relative rotation, or relative location, sorry, and plug that into our new location. And then for needle 2 here, we need to get that, split that, we'll split it here. And then we're also going to want to set that at the end here. Okay. And for this one, I am going to subtract, let's say 10. that will be the Y and the Y over there. And then again, we need to duplicate all of this. And I just need to put a negative here. Okay, so let's go ahead and check that out. I like to just check every little step I do, just make sure everything is going good. Okay. Now, there's one problem here that I see. It's not, I mean, it's not really a problem, but because this is waiting for this to move, it's moving this one and then it's moving that one. So what we could do, if you don't like that, we could just do a sequence on each one of these. And again, this is just going to get a little messy. There's not really a great way to do this. I guess we could create another event if we wanted to. I will just, for right now, just add some reroute nodes to try and make this a little bit cleaner. And let's see. Let's move all this over. Add another sequence down here. Whoops. Yeah, this is pretty messy. Probably what I would do is maybe make these into separate events just to clean this up a little bit. But this should let's see, let's uncheck that. This should move those at the same time now. Okay, there we go. So now when we're doing that, that's moving those at the same time, and we're setting it on and off. That looks good. All right, and now we're basically just going to repeat this process for the other three switches. And I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how we can actually check for the answer. Okay, so I have gone through and basically duplicated. Everything is pretty much the same, except we just need to make sure that all of our Booleans here are the correct Booleans. So we need switch 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you need to, again, make sure that you add your events right here after your timeline. After finished, you need to add your events for switch 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I have gone through and just kind of figured out the correct values that I want to set up so that I can get the correct answer here. So again, the only thing that I'm changing really is are these values right here. I'm just subtracting positive and negative here. So I'll kind of show you what the result is. So if I go in and we go in and start manipulating these, all of these will move the dials, a certain increment. But if we find the correct combination, which is right here, then that is the answer. So basically, these two are the only ones that have to be switched on. Okay. Okay, so let's get our puzzle check. So let's go ahead and do a custom event. And we'll call this answer check. And essentially what I want to know is, we go back here and look, I believe it's 2 and 4 are the ones that are the correct answer. So essentially when 1 is off, 2 is on, 3 is off, and 4 is on, then that is our correct solution. So that's what we want to check. Now, we want to run this check after each one of these switches, or after each one of these switch events. So we're just going to do answer check on each one of these. Answer check. I guess I could just duplicate these. Oops. Okay, maybe not. And one more answer check. Okay. Now, what we want to check is we want to know when 2, let's go ahead and get 2 and 4, when both of these, so I'm going to get an and, when both of these, I'm going to get an and here. When 2 and 4 are on, so get a branch. When those are true, then we want to move on. And then we want to say, okay, if these are both true, that's good. But then we want to check, okay, is switch 1, is that true or false? And if, so if this is true, we want to check that. Now, as long as this is false, we can go on and check one more, our last one. So we'll do another branch. And our last one is 3. So as long as this one is false, then our solution should be correct. Now, I know this might be a little hard to follow, but if you just kind of think about it logically, what we're checking, we're going through, we're saying, okay, is 2 and 4, are those both true? If they're not true, then our puzzle is not correct. Nothing's going to happen. But if those are true, then we need to check, okay, is switch 1 on? Is switch 1 true? If switch 1 is true, meaning that it's turned on, then our solution is incorrect. Nothing happens. But if it's false, then we need to check the last one, switch 3. Is that one turned off? If it is turned off, that is where we're going to call our puzzle completed. And that is going to solve our puzzle. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Let's also put a print string here just so we can see. Puzzle completed. Okay. So now, when we try this and we get the right answer, we'll get puzzle completed. But if we have, all of these turned on, or just some of them turned on, it's not going to say puzzle completed until we have that correct positioning there. And that is pretty much it now. So, we could do something like, we could maybe, I don't know, maybe this light is not nearly as bright. Maybe we set it to like 1. And if you remember from the previous puzzle, we can control these things on our level blueprint. So I can open the level blueprint. And if I click on my puzzle, go to the level blueprint, I can then say puzzle completed and get this add EVD puzzle completed. And now I can have basically anything I want to do in the level, I can have it triggered here. So if we wanted to maybe get this light, I can get a reference to that light. And we could say set intensity. And, let's set it something really bright, like 25. Oops. Okay, so now when we go in and play, and we solve the puzzle, it is going to trigger that event, and we are good to go. So that is pretty much it, guys. I hope you found that useful. Once you know how to do a puzzle like this, there's a lot that you can do. There's a lot of things that you can apply this to make your own puzzle and do your own mechanics with it. So I hope you found that useful. I know it might be kind of a little overwhelming, especially if you've never done a puzzle like this before, but just take your time and just go through it, and let me know if you have any questions. And if you found this useful, as always, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, take care, everyone.